As promised, Wilner Hotline. It is Monday. It is a time for John and I to sit here and sit around the campfire and chop things up and say, wow, John, when I told you at the start of the year that Jedd Fisch would be coach of the year, and when John told me at the start of the year, yeah, and USC's defense will be one of the worst in the nation, and we kind of nodded with each other in agreement, because of course we can make stuff up here in November of what we said back then, because that's what we do. We don't really do that, but John, if I would have told you those two things would have happened, you would not have believed me. Am I right on that, or?
Well, I wasn't convinced USC's defense was going to be very good. Now, as bad as it's been, a little surprising, yes. But they didn't change a whole lot from a unit that wasn't very good last year. So that's not a shocker. Arizona's performance, every year there is one team, at least one team in the Pac-12 that provides a big upside surprise, and one team that has, call it downside disappointment, right? And this year, it certainly appears with 3 games left, Arizona is the team with the upside surprise. I think most folks, myself included, expected something in the 4-5 win range. Maybe you get a couple of good breaks. Maybe you get to 6-6. Certainly did not expect 5-3 right now, and a 4-2 record in conference. I mean, they're in the race to get to Las Vegas. Whether they can make it or not, I don't know. The Utah game is going to be huge, right? For that, but they are in it. They're one of 6 teams that has a shot to get to Las Vegas to play for the conference championship. If you were voting right now, I think I certainly would vote for Jedd Fisch as coach of the year. I mean, you could make the case Kalen DeBoer's got the only undefeated team, right? And Kyle Whittingham has certainly done a great job. But Fisch is in the top group for sure. Their defense has been a huge surprise. I think it's the most improved unit of the 24 offenses and defenses in the conference. Arizona's defense is the most improved. And certainly, who would have foreseen that Noah Fafita would step in mid-season and lead the team the way he's leading the team, play with the efficiency and poise of a veteran? That you never want to see kids get hurt, but you do wonder where the Cats would be if Jayden de Laura had not gotten hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I'm watching them the other night against UCLA, and they controlled that game.
They
was
did.
just one of those games that they went about their business. It was very methodical.
Yep.
And, I understand where Utah and Washington and USC and Oregon are on everybody's screens this week. I get it. That's how it should be. But you said it earlier, and I'll go back to that. The path for U of A to make it to Las Vegas for the championship game, their path looks pretty simple from a scheduling standpoint right now, John. It's not like they have a lot of road traps left.
No, they don't. I mean, beating Utah is going to be the big one. And you never know about the Territorial Cup, right? I think they should handle Colorado this week. But the only way they can get to Vegas is if Oregon loses, or if Washington loses twice. So to a large extent, it's outside their control. I mean, Oregon's playing lights out right now. But Arizona would need to win out, and then the Ducks would have to lose once, or the Washington would have to lose twice. And then you get into the tiebreaker formula. And the fact Arizona and Oregon didn't play each other makes it much more complicated. So, I would give their chances of getting into Vegas right now at, I don't know, 20%. It's not very high, 15-20%. But if you had asked me 2 months ago, I would have given you 1% or 0.1%, right? So that is the position relative to what we all thought is exponentially higher.
Well, and you go back to the overtime game against USC, they're that close, John. That's the thing that's shocking to me.
They're that close. Well, right, and the Washington game was one touchdown. Right. I mean, and they lost in overtime at Mississippi State with 5 turnovers by their offense. They're pretty close to being 8-1.
Right. And they're ranked this week in the AP poll, which never happens. Tonight's the start of U of A basketball. And you know how it is. You've been there. Like, football season is just kind of sort of something to do to pass some time until they play hoops. And it doesn't matter if they're playing Sonoma State or they're playing Duke this Friday, which they are. basketball is king in Tucson, and I'm just curious if this will change. Jedd's tried everything. The team is winning. Are we in a different climate now in Tucson where, if a football program's good 20 years ago, so what? Who cares? 10 years ago, so what? Who cares? Maybe we are a football town now in Tucson. Maybe things have changed.
I'm skeptical.
Yeah,
I think that the only way
fine.
that could I think that real change on that front would require Arizona winning at a high level for multiple years in a row, right? And the thing is, the move to the Big 12 to me would work against the move to become a football school, because the excitement about joining the Big 12 is the basketball.
Right.
It's
right.
Kansas and Baylor and those series, right? So I don't know. We've seen Arizona, every so often, right? It happened 2014, won the South. Sometimes it's 6, 8, 10 years, but you get an uptick, right? Where Arizona is relevant in the Pac-12, but it isn't sustained. And I think it needs to be sustained, right? That's what Lute did. It was sustained excellence, right? It wasn't like Lute was going to the NCAA tournament once every 4 or 5 years. He was there every year. And so I think if you're going to get a foundational change in the way Arizona fans view their two teams, football has got to win multiple years in a row at a high level.
And Lute had a personality about him. Jedd does not really. He's on the low-key side from my view, and having dealt with him a little bit. And you also have to go back to all those players that Lute put in the NBA and how close they were and how they always came back. And a guy like Steve Kerr could be the leader to all those players to say, we've got to, when things are rough, we're going to dig in, we're going to be there. Richard Jefferson puts his name on a gym. There's just a lot of things that obviously have to go that direction. I'm just curious if it could ever be, or if it's just, nope, it's always going to be like KU football and basketball. It's always going to be like Duke football and basketball. That's just how it's always going to be in Tucson.
Yep. Well, or Connecticut, Syracuse, Indiana. I mean, there's no school that's a football and basketball school, really, right? I mean, look at UCLA even. They're still basketball school. And you look at the football schools and their basketball programs aren't able to get a whole lot of traction. It's really hard to be both. And the other thing is, and certainly, this is probably a verboten topic in Tucson, but if Jedd Fisch does keep winning, is Jedd Fisch going to stick around? Because he's at a basketball school, right? Yep. So, and are they going to pay him enough? I mean, and those things all that, but that's a good problem to have. That's a good debate to be having in Tucson sports bars and all that, because that means Fisch is making an impact and raising the quality of play.
Yeah, and in about 2 weeks, and I shouldn't even say that. Even now, you and I both know there's jobs that are coming open, and headhunters have already reached out, and lawyers and attorneys are already greasing the skids. It's not 2 weeks. I'm wrong on that. It's not. It's now. It's like it's almost, when you see fish, you see blood in the water around the sharks, like Texas A&M's job coming open. There's going to be a lot of people saying, at least get your name in that because you're going to get a raise. That's how it works.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. And the thing is, I don't know that Fisch is ready to jump to a blue blood, but, there's a lot of football jobs out there that he would probably view more favorably than Arizona, right? I know he clearly has a passion for Arizona, but and this gets back to what we were talking about. Arizona is a basketball school, right? Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it has worked in Tucson since 1984 or 83. But if you're good in football, then you're facing the realities of having to pay to keep your coach. I mean, Washington, the best example right now in the Pac-12, right, is Washington. Obviously, Kalen DeBoer is grossly underpaid, and there's going to be some big jobs open, and the Huskies are going to have to decide: are we paying Kalen DeBoer $8 or $10 million a year, or are we going to let him go? So, like I said, it's a good problem for Arizona to have because that shows Fisch is making progress.
Jon Wilner with us for a couple of minutes. You can follow Jon over on his social medias on X at Wilner Hotline. His content on sports360az.com, and it's out there on a national basis. Is USC going to come open for their head coach?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, I can't imagine Lincoln Riley is going to go to another right. You don't go to another college if you're the head coach at USC. You just don't do that. I don't know that the NFL is going to work for him. if you're an NFL team, why do you think Lincoln Riley is necessarily better than Cliff Kingsbury? And that experiment failed, right? They're a lot alike. High offense, they can't get their defense solved. And I think until Riley shows that he can produce a quality defense that is good enough to get to the playoff, I don't know why an NFL team would take a chance on him, to be honest with you. But you never know. I'm sure he's looking, right? I mean, it's only going to get harder for them next year in the Big Ten, right? If he can't solve their issues on defense. And I don't know, right? They're at the point now where the negative recruiting on defense is going to potentially impact them, right? Why would you go to USC? They don't care about defense. That is a tough stigma for a head coach to snuff out.
But John, I guess I'm going down the path, and I probably should have phrased it better, of, is he going to survive? I know.
Oh, you mean get fired?
Yeah, this year. Because look, the USC alumni base, they don't like to be embarrassed. They don't like to lose to Notre Dame. They don't like to go about their business in a way where we have everything in place. And they don't care about the size of the check. They don't. There's a new athletic director that's there at USC. They are easily one of the most underachieving teams in the nation this year. And there really isn't anything out there. Beating UCLA, so what here in a couple of weeks? They've been humiliated. So, John, I'm just curious. They've already fired Alex Grinch, which should have happened a long time ago. Is there enough push, do you think, that Lincoln Riley could be pushed out the door at the end of this year? Because I think Harbaugh's going to get shown the door at Michigan, I think. I think USC could come open. I think Texas A&M, there's no question that's going to come open. So I'm starting to look at the jobs, and if Kalen DeBoer is not paid, that job's going to come open because he is going to go to Michigan or he would go to US. I just think there's going to be a trickle down where USC should be a point of conversation and not just, well, they just hired him. Well, I mean, Caleb Williams is sobbing on national television. How do you put that in context if you're a quarterback being recruited by USC versus anybody else? You don't.
Well, I mean, Lincoln Riley can turn around and say, I got Caleb Williams a Heisman. He's going to be a first-round pick or number one pick, and Jalen Hurts and Baker Mayfield, all those guys. I cannot imagine a scenario where he gets fired after this season. Even if they lose to Oregon and UCLA and they finish 7-5. He won 11 games last year. They played for the Pac-12 championship game last year, and I think they probably were a year ahead of schedule in 2022, right? And now they're back to what's happening this year is kind of the performance that a lot of people expected last year, right? They were going to have a ramp-up season, and then they'd be really good in year two. Instead, they were really good in year one and a little bit of a fallback. I can't believe that they would make a change to be at his pay grade and everything that he's done in terms of turning the program around. That is hard for me to believe. But if they don't get it fixed by the end of next season, then I think it'll be interesting. There's going to be an enormous amount of pressure on him to hire the best offensive coordinator he can find, right? Absolutely. Jimmy Lake, the former Washington head coach and defensive coordinator, who I think is still on the Rams staff, that's an example of a name that could come up. But that's going to be the big thing is, hey, you got to hire we don't care what you're paying. You got to get somebody who can provide us with a quality defense, because if he does that, they're going to be hard to stop. The guy knows how to coach offense.
Okay, a couple things to get you out of here. Utah, Washington, who you got?
I have the Huskies, but I think it'll be a close game. Washington's defense isn't good enough. It's not like Oregon's defense is not good enough to shut down Utah's offense consistently. And Utah's defense is pretty good. I think that'll be a very close, fun game. But I do think the Huskies will, they got the home field. That'll help.
Oregon going to wax USC.
Oh, I think so. To me, Oregon's playing the best in the conference by far. It'll be interesting to see how USC's defense responds with with the change of defensive coordinator.
Right.
Is there a sense of relief? Are the players, a little bit freer, unburdened? But I don't see how, even if they are, how they're going to do against the Ducks. I think we're going to win. To me, it's a question of whether that is a 10-point win or whether that is a blowout.
Okay, last thing, Arizona State gives Kenny an extra year on his contract, and they keep Brian Ward as defensive coordinator. Two moves that are way under the radar screen for a program that got their tails just destroyed up at Salt Lake City. However, okay, you and I are both on the same page about everything that's gone on here and all the nonsense within the program. But I would say that in the last 10 months, that ASU has hit their stride more than they've missed. They totally missed on how they informed Kenny about the bowl ban, Dillingham. But I do think little things do add up. And I think Kenny's had them playing hard. Utah started rolling downhill, and that was the end of it. Quarterback got injured. They just didn't play well. They had some breaks go again, all that stuff. But I do think, John, there is a little bit of, are they trying to get through the forest now? I know they still need the other shoe to drop. Does that mean anything to you that they're able to keep a respected defensive coordinator and add a year on Kenny's deal?
No, I think giving Dillingham a 1-year extension was a mistake. I think they
Really?
should have given him a 3-year extension.
Okay.
Absolutely. To me, he's done a great job keeping these guys together through an incredibly difficult circumstance. It was going to be a difficult circumstance before the bowl ban, with the roster turnover and the NCAA stuff looming and the new staff. The fact that he's got them with 2 wins, and I think they could end up with 1 more, and playing hard every week. I mean, Utah, think that stuff happens, right? I mean, that was next level stuff happening, but still it's stuff happening. And you know, with the injuries, you can kind of see how it would get to that point. But look, if you're an ASU fan, I don't know how you can complain at all about what's happened under Dillingham. And I think you've got to be encouraged that once all of the external stuff settles, that your program is in good hands, and it's in the hands of a guy who cares deeply about it. He's made smart decisions with his coaching staff. I don't, to me, he's the right guy for the job. I just get back to 3 years ago next month was 70-7, right? And what's happened since then. And that is all about the administration and management of the program, right? I mean, completely. And ASU fans have every right to be frustrated with the administration, happy with Dillingham, encouraged about Dillingham, but just beside themselves about how the program's been managed administratively.
So I love having Jon Wilner on every week, because he drops a nugget or 2 or 5, and like he did in this segment. I'll let you go off that. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Brad.
It's Jon Wilner. You can find him at Wilner Hotline on his social media channels. Of course, his content on sports360az.com. And we're back with more after this timeout.